This is the appointed time, and we have a quorum. This meeting will be adjourned at 5:30 in the afternoon. If necessary, I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Let me remind members that if there is direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the items being discussed today, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak according to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures. Please also note the voting requirement when direct pecuniary interests are involved according to Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedure. Now, I need to declare in relation to the 3 public works items that I am an advisor to Bank of China, Hong Kong. The first paper is FCR paper number 47. Members are invited to approve the recommendations of the Public Works Subcommittee paper PWSC 2025-26-15. That is the 21 GB associated works for government facilities at the Hong Kong port area under the Huanggang Redevelopment project. According to Rule 3A of the Finance Committee procedures, as the PWSC did not recommend further discussion by the FC, neither have we received a joint petition from not less than 3 members for further discussion. According to the recommendation of the PWSC, there will be no further discussion here. I now put this paper to a vote. Paper number 47 of FCR. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone against? I think the question is agreed by members who have voted, so I declare this item passed. Next item, FCR 2025-26, paper number 48. Members are invited to approve the PWSC's recommendation to upgrade 25 EM to Category A at an estimated cost of 249.7 million MOD prices for the Lift and Escalator Technology Center development project at the annex building of the Hong Kong Institute of Vocational Education, Kwai Chung, at 81 Heng Shing Road. Now, similar to the previous item, the PWSC did not recommend further discussion by the FC, so I will put this paper to a vote. FCR 2025-26, paper number 48. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? None. I think the question is agreed by the majority of members who have voted, so the item is passed. Item 3. FCR 2025-26, paper number 49. Members are invited to endorse the PWSC's recommendation to upgrade part of 371WF as 382WF entitled Downtown May Water Treatment Works Extension Main Works Package 1 to Category A at an estimated cost of 9,608.5 million in MOD prices. Also, B, the upgrading of 377WF to Category A at an estimated cost of 1.0356 billion in MOD prices. That is in relation to improvement of water supply to Northern New Territories. Similar to the items we just dealt with, the PWSC did not recommend a further discussion of this item. And we'll stick to that. I will put this paper to a vote. FCR 2025-26, paper number 49. Mr. Michael Tian has claimed division. The division bell will ring for 5 minutes.
因為一個公務。好，現在開始表決。
Voting begins.
喺我宣布表決結果之前呢，請大家
Now, before I declare that the voting is closed, please check your votes. I see that members have all voted. Voting is closed. The result is displayed. 78 present, 76 for, none against, and 1 abstention. The question is agreed, and the item is passed. The fourth item is FCR 2025-26 paper number 50. Members are invited to approve the creation of a new commitment of $683,357,000 to install and enhance computer systems for the Immigration Department at the redeveloped Huanggang port. On the 7th of 7th, the Immigration Department consulted the panel on security, and we're joined by Undersecretary for Security, Mr. Churk, and also Principal Assistant Secretary, Ms. Lam, as well as Assistant Director of Immigration, Mr. Fan, and also Mr. Orr. Ms. Carmen Kam, Chair of the panel, will report the key deliberations. The panel on security discussed the relevant funding proposal on the 7th of July 2025. Members supported this funding application proposed by the administration. The estimated non-current expenditure then was $950 million. Now the funding applied for now stands at $683 million, and that's 28% less than the previous estimate. The fund will be used for enhancing the computer system to implement collaborative inspection and joint clearance mode at the redeveloped Huanggang port so as to provide round-the-clock clearance service for passengers. There is also installation of other systems such as the electronic documentation of information system on network or Edison, next generation smart ID card system, Smart Tix 2, next generation electronic passport, e-passport system, and also next generation application and investigation EC systems. Members have received an undertaking from the government that under this collaborative inspection mode, the relevant authorities will only use the collected data, including ID documentation and bioinformation for checking, and no sharing of information will take place. The members have further proposed to the administration to enhance tourist experience and enhance efficiency of clearance, and the mainland authorities should look into the feasibility of facial recognition for immigration clearance. The app should also be optimized in terms of the provision of information of real-time waiting time, both inside and outside of the clearance hall. The administration responded to members' questions and comments at the panel meeting, and we also support the submission of this item to the FC for discussion. I see that 10 members are waiting to speak. Let me read out their names: Johnny Ng, Chow Man Kong, William Wong, Chow Siu Chung, Lam Chun Sing, Chan Siu Hong, Hui Simon Lee, Wendy Hong, Andrew Lam, and Chan Kim Pok. Members, now this is an item in relation to enhancement of the computer systems in relation to the overall provision of facilities at Huanggang Port. We already voted on the item. So we're now focusing on the provision of computer systems for the redeveloped Huanggang port. Let's start with Mr. Johnny Ng. I support the funding application, but I have a number of questions. I understand that originally the estimate was some $900 million, Now the figure has come down to 680 million, down by 28%, and that's quite a substantial figure. May I know why? Has it to do with a different approach to tendering or a different design? I'd like the administration to elaborate on this. The second question. This is a new computer system, as I understand. In terms of compatibility, will the new system also apply to other BCPs gradually, and how much savings can be made? The third question is about the lifespan of this computer system. How long will it be good for before you come back and ask for another round of funding? Other Secretary. Chairman, now, since this is the last meeting of the Finance Committee of this term of LegCo, I'd like to thank Chairman and members for diligently scrutinizing all the public works projects, funding applications, and establishment proposals, and I thank members for their invaluable views. Now, let me answer Mr. Ng's questions. To answer the first one, there is a decrease by 28% in terms of the estimate because we conducted tendering in parallel, and the latest figure reflects the return tender price. Now, an amount will be set aside for procurement of the system by the Shenzhen side according to the entrusted agreement, totaling about 170 million Hong Kong dollars. And as a result, there is room to drive down costs in general. The second question relates to system compatibility. Now, this is the first time we implement the collaborative inspection and joint clearance mode. So we'll need to make certain adjustments to make sure that this mode can be implemented. As for other computer systems, we need to consider other factors objectively to see whether this can be implemented as well. Now, about the lifespan of this system, at least it will be good for 10 years, subject to proper maintenance and repair. If we're able to apply security patches appropriately, the lifespan should be prolonged.
Next, Dr. Chow Man Kong. The government manages to save up quite a huge amount of money. I see that 15%, that is $107 million will be paid to the Shenzhen authorities. This is because the system will be shared by both the Shenzhen authorities and the Hong Kong authorities. It is expected that about $65 million of recurrent expenditure will be expected for this system. Will this be reserved for the procurement of hardware by the Shenzhen authorities? Will the maintenance cost be included in the $65 million? Now we're talking a piece of critical infrastructure. Will insurance be included in the cost? We're going to pay the Shenzhen authorities about $10 million. And that's mainly for the gates and turnstiles. For example, there will be devices to scan passport and identity documents as well as biometric features. After the information is scanned, the system will be passed to us by the Shenzhen authorities. On the recurrent expenditure of some $60 million, it will mainly be spent on maintaining this system, that is the electronic system. Well, will there be security features for this piece of critical infrastructure? Yes, this is a piece of critical infrastructure. It has to do with immigration clearance. So in this regard, we have security in mind. We have to meet the relevant requirements in relation to this system. Next, Mr. Cho Siu-chung. Thank you. The government is implementing the new collaborative inspection and joint clearance mode at the new Huanggang port. I very much support this scheme, so I will support the funding proposal. Just now, some members have asked this question. At the panel on security, the cost suggested was different. The cost is reduced by about 28% from $950 million to about $500 million. And there's a drop of about $200 million in part of the cost. I'd like to ask about paragraph 14 on the breakdown of the non-recurrent expenditure. So, how was the cost reduced? Which part is involved in the breakdown? Also, according to the information submitted to the Public Works Subcommittee, for port facilities, if we compare the construction cost on the Hong Kong side as well as the Shenzhen side, the cost for the Shenzhen side is about half of that compared to that for the Hong Kong side. Is it because of the furniture and equipment? Now, for this project, it is the funding is mostly used for procuring computer hardware. Have we compared the cost of the hardware in both Shenzhen and Hong Kong? I believe that to implement this new clearance mode, both Shenzhen and Hong Kong will adopt similar models in terms of the computer systems. If we adopt the same standards to be applied by the Shenzhen side, will it be cheaper for us? Also, paragraph 20 mentions that there will be staff cost for contract staff. As far as I understand, the contract staff will help with the development and testing of the system. When the government procures the hardware or the software, wouldn't the testing and development be covered already? How come the government will still have to engage a team of contract staff to help with the development and testing? And how many contract staff will you have to engage, and for how long? Mr. Chuck? We are applying for about $680 million, about $550 million. That's about 80% of the funding we're applying for will be spent on the immigration control system. And that's because we are able to reduce cost on procuring the control system. We managed to save about $200 million. For subhead 703, when we discussed that project, some members asked a similar question. Now, this funding proposal is for procuring the immigration system. When we procure the gates and turnstiles, we're able to get some data, but we won't be able to collect data for the other systems from the Shenzhen side. But it looks like the costs for both sides are more or less the same. As for the $17 million for engaging contract staff, that is $67 million. That's for UAT. Because we are going to hire contractors to help design the system. But at the same time, we as the execution department, we have to ensure that everything could be implemented. How many staff are you going to engage and for how long? Do you have the relevant information? We will have a team of 40 contract staff. We'll engage them for 2 years. Next, Mr. Len Chun-sing. Thank you, Chairman. I support this funding proposal. The government is going to redevelop the entire Huanggang port. We have already approved the funding for the entire infrastructure works. So, technically, we should support the funding proposal for procuring the computer systems too, so that the new Huanggang port could be put into operation soon. at this new Huanggang port, there will be some new vehicle inspection facilities, and that would facilitate the southbound travel scheme for Guangdong vehicles as well as the northbound travel scheme for Hong Kong vehicles. Some drivers told us that when they pass through the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge to get to Hong Kong during special holidays and festivals, there were congestion. And vehicles have to stay for a rather long time for the clearance procedure. I don't think it was a result of a breakdown of the system, but when there are many vehicles waiting to pass the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge, would the computer system slow down and delay the entire immigration procedure? Will the Security Bureau, like the Digital Policy Office coordinating electronic services, carry out a testing when there's a peak of vehicular flow so that vehicles won't have to queue up for a long time for immigration procedures? So will you reserve some money for third-party testing in this regard? Now, on the contingency costs, some 10% of the funding will be reserved for that purpose. A lot of members are concerned whether 10% has to be reserved for that purpose. For other projects such as the new generation communication system for the Hong Kong Police Force, the administration reserved about 5% of the total funding for contingency. How come this time around we have to reserve 10% for contingency? For this funding, about 10%, that's about $100 million, are for the Shenzhen authorities to install the computer systems for us. If the Shenzhen authority is able to deal with the installation work, will Hong Kong be able to pay less for contingencies? Also, if some of the systems are to be dealt with by the Shenzhen authority, in case there are any delays, will the Shenzhen authorities be able to shoulder the costs? And that we won't have to set aside so much money for a contingency. I'd like to learn more about the deal we have with the Shenzhen authority. 2 questions from the Secretary. Now, for this new Huanggang port, travelers will pass through immigration through the new clearance mode. Same for vehicles. And vehicles will go through immigration in electronic mode. And that's different from the labor mode we adopt at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge. At the bridge, we have colleagues from the Department of Health as well as Customs and Excise Department, and we deploy human staff to check all the identity documents. That's why it takes a bit longer. In future, at the new Huanggang port, all passengers will have to get off, and there will be a special area dedicated for that. And vehicles will pass through a so-called 5-in-1 channel. And all vehicles will go through immigration and clearance check, and they'll have to allow us to check the identity documents, so the manpower required will be less. We will make sure that we will work with the Shenzhen authorities to ensure efficiency. Shenzhen authority, including the Zhuhai port, all along they have been adopting the electronic clearance mode. So we are confident with this new clearance mode. And for the vehicle immigration system, they are developed by the Shenzhen authority, so it should work well. We are reserving 10% of the funding for a contingency purpose. There shouldn't be too many unforeseeable factors. However, this is the first time we're working with the Shenzhen authorities to develop this system. And the Shenzhen authority will have to make sure that by the deadline, the system will be able to put into use. So we think that by reserving 10% of the funding for contingency, it will help us deal with any unforeseeable situation. Any money left will be handed back to the public coffers. Next, Mr. Chen Xiuhong. We have just passed the funding proposal for building the major Huanggang port infrastructure, and the computer system serves as the soul of this project. Both are indispensable. Now, the paper provided covers a lot of figures. I'd like to learn more about them. In paragraph 14, it is mentioned that for financial implications, there is a breakdown in terms of the estimated non-recurrent expenditure, including hardware, software, and communication network, and so on. There will be an immigration system that helps implement the new clearance mode. We will upgrade the software and hardware, and for other computer systems, they will be rolled out at the same time. As far as I understand, the immigration control system will be the major part of this proposal. For hardware, it will cost some $300 million, and software some $60 million. Can the Undersecretary provide a breakdown for the immigration control system, which is the major system under this proposal? How much percentage will it occupy in terms of the cost?
Second question. We just voted in favor of the hardware, and that's infrastructure. Now we're discussing the computer systems, $320 million. According to paragraphs 14, 15, and 16 are reserved for the hardware and software, and $100 million of non-recurrent expenditure will be paid to the Shenzhen authorities. Now, under Head 703, I understand that furniture and fitting will account for $1.3 billion out of $1.6 billion. Now, if $73 million are reserved for the procurement by Shenzhen authorities, the relevant CIQ facilities under the new clearance mode, then my question is this. In relation to the $73 million and also the $108 million stipulated in this paper, can you tell us whether there is any duplication? I suppose these are two different matters, furniture and fittings and computer hardware. The third question is about communication network totaling $89 million. I suppose it includes, say, fiber optics, wireless network. Does it include cloud computing as well? Because the Hong Kong Police Force spent $24 million to build a fiber optics network, whereas here, $89 million on communication network. I want to know what is included. Now, to answer the first question, the ICONS, or immigration control system, accounts for 80% of the total funding. Now, of the $550 million, 30% of this amount will go to the Shenzhen authorities under the entrustment agreement. As for the remaining sum that was spent on a number of computer systems, such as the electronic documentation of information system or network, or Edison, is a data storage and retrieval system and an archive of high-quality images. This will allow manual checking of travel documents. The next system is called SmartTix 2, Next Generation Smart ID Card System, totaling about $3 million. Again, our staff will be able to conduct checks from the system to verify the authenticity of the ID cards. The other one is e-passport 2, next generation electronic passport system. It carries similar function than the one I mentioned before. So these relate to the computer platforms to be procured. There are also 2 other supporting systems for the processing of cases. That's the Government Office Automation System as well as the Electronic Record Keeping System. So for the previous systems I mentioned, that's about 1 million and also 24 million for the electronic record keeping system, as well as 35 million for the contract staff. As for communication network, this amount is reserved exclusively for the connection to the service of the system. What about cloud computing? All inclusive. Now, I think in the second question, Mr. Chan referred to $1.3 billion reserved for furniture and fitting, and here $73 million are set aside for equipment. So is there a discrepancy here? For $73 million, this amount relates to the joint clearance mode. For $73 million, it does not relate to the computer systems. It's rather something relating to the infrastructure and the facilities. For example, for lifts and escalators, we need to abide by our unique local standards. It doesn't mean that we don't meet the mainland requirements. Only that, for example, we should either use a switch or a button, something like that. Next, Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I hope this BCP will be commissioned as quickly as possible. When it comes to digital assets, I'm concerned about the cost of data recording and retrieval. I want to know whether this is included in the cost estimate. Where do I find this item of expenditure? The second question is about lifespan of this system. My question is about depreciation and also apportionment of costs. 2 questions about data storage, maintenance, retrieval, security. All these are included in our system design. The expected lifespan of this system is 10 years, but of course, because of technological advancements, it's necessary to upgrade the system from time to time. So our maintenance work includes the application of security patches. But I'd say that the lifespan is one of 10 years. I think Dr. Lee also asked a question about the accounting side of things, and also depreciation, apportionment of costs, a period of appreciation, for example. I don't think I have information at hand. We'll supplement this information later. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chair. I have a number of questions. At the Huanggang port, the collaborative inspection and joint clearance mode will be implemented. Can I call it co-location arrangement? This is a breakthrough. I welcome the arrangement. Now, the second point is that under the entrustment arrangement, a third party will be engaged for procurement and installation of computer hardware. So, who has the right over the use of the hardware, or is it that there will be joint management and joint use of the hardware by two governments? And what is the arrangement in relation to maintenance and repair? Now, a dedicated task force has been set up, and that this task force or group will be dissolved after disbanding the group. Who should be in charge of maintenance of the system? Would it cause maintenance costs to go up? With increased capacity at Huanggang port, in theory, additional manpower should be provided. But with the application of technology, is it that there is no need for additional manpower? Can you tell us about this manpower situation? 4 questions. About the maintenance of computer systems, we entrust the Shenzhen authority to install and procure and install the hardware. But the Shenzhen authority does not have right of possession over the hardware. And in fact, we'll be submitting a piece of legislation to LegCo about the drawing of boundaries at the border checkpoint. And by then, there will be a clear definition on the ownership of the computer hardware. The consensus is that the Hong Kong authority will take charge of the construction of the building, whereas computer hardware is something separate from it. And we have commenced discussion at the working level. The second point is about engagement of staff for system development. And upon expiry of the 2-year period, the Immigration Department will take up this task. Manpower, that's the third question. On our side, it's called Lok Ma Chau BCP. And once you cross to the other side is Huanggang. It will be much larger. For example, the number of counters will go up from 39 to 134, and also the number of e-channels from 39 to 145 to 68. As for vehicle clearance passages, it will also increase from 20 to 26. So we expect spending on staff costs go up to 90 million. Maintenance costs, management about 460 million. Altogether, operating costs some $90 million, together with miscellaneous expenditure, some 750 million annual recurrent expenditure. Can we call it co-location arrangement then? Now, I think I won't call it co-location arrangement, because it's not the case that the inspection will only be carried out on one side. Inspection takes place on both sides, only that the passengers will only be required to show their proof of identity once. Mr. Andrew Lam. I'm looking at paragraphs 26 and 27. Starting from 2027-28, the recurrent expenditure will stand at $64 million. And then in paragraph 28, it said that starting from 2026-27, the proposed IT systems will bring about cost avoidance of $129 million or so in staff costs. At the same time, some $900 million of funding were approved for upgrading the information systems in all BCPs. Your paper also referred to another FC paper, and that's FCR 2012-13, number 67. And I'm quoting from that paper. For recurrent expenditure covering all BCPs, not only the Huanggang port, in the final entry, it reads, recurrent expenditure from 2020-2021 onwards, $129 million. And then in paragraph 28, it said that starting from 2026-27, the proposed IT systems will bring about cost avoidance of $129 million. In the final entry, it reads, recurrent expenditure from 2020-2021 onwards, $129 million. will stand at $193 million. For recurring expenditure on staff, some $83 million. We are way past 2020-21. That means this recurrent expenditure quoted will be our base figure. Now with the new Huanggang port, in theory, you should take out that part of recurrent expenditure under the column 2020-2021 onwards in that paper. As for the actual sum, if we take a look at paragraph 26 and compare that with the one in 2012-2013, I really cannot find any correlation. Can you answer this question? Do you understand the question, Mr. Chair? First and foremost, I don't have the figure for the 2012-2013 paper, so I'm afraid I'm not in a position to comment on that. But let me try to answer the member's question. The Huanggang port is how Shenzhen Authority calls it. We call it the Lok Ma Chau BCP. Now, we moved the BCP or the building to the Shenzhen side so as to implement the collaborative inspection and joint clearance mode. For Lok Ma Chau BCP, it entails a recurrent expenditure to a sum of 460 for staff costs, 460 million for staff costs, and maintenance costs 23 million, together with 60 million of operating expenditure. Now, that means for the Lok Ma Chau BCP at Hong Kong port, altogether the recurrent expenditure will stand at 490 million. And about this new portion of the redeveloped Hong Kong port, we're talking about 700 million. So in order to operate the new Hong Kong port, we need an annual expenditure of 1.2 billion. Now you refer to paragraph 28. As I mentioned, the number of e-channels will go up from 39 to 134. So assuming we don't have member support, that means the e-channels will be converted back to counters. That means manpower is needed to man these counters. During peak periods, our staff in general will man 3 e-channels. During non-peak hours, they may be able to oversee more e-channels. So by using e-channels, we can save manpower. So you can do the math. If we're not able to have 139 e-channels, that means we need to have 139 counters. According to paragraph 8 of the paper, it says, since January 2016, icons has been implemented in phases at all BCPs, and then there's a footnote 6. The footnote 6 refers to the FCR paper I just mentioned. Now, it's okay that you don't provide an answer here, as long as I know that you're able to make savings. Still, I'd like to have a written response to my question. That's the $900 million of recurrent expenditure starting from 2020-2021 onwards, covering staff costs and recurrent expenditure. Now, since we have a new system now, will you be able to make further savings?
Chairman, the figure here for 2013 is about the backup system. Here, the paper is about a new system for the new clearance mode, and the back-end system will have to be compatible with the new immigration control system. So they are inseparable. Well, let me remind members, only 3 more members are waiting to speak. If members would like to speak, please be here to press the request to speak button. Next, Mr. Chan Kin Po. Well, unless there is special arrangement, I believe this will be the last FC meeting for this legislative session. I'd like to thank the Undersecretary for swiftly responding to all the questions I raised, and that makes my work a lot easier, so I'd like to express my thanks to him. Now I think this is one of the projects with great efficiency. You said initially the immigration clearance time was 5 minutes. It will be shortened to 3 minutes. Also, by 2027, you'll be able to save $15 million. And also, every year, you'll be able to save about $130 million of staff cost. I think this is one of the few projects that see a reduction of manpower and cost. You said that this could be used for 10 years, so we will be able to save a lot of money in 10 years' time. So I think it is very rare that we see a project that could help save the government so much money. So I support this funding proposal. Next, Dr. So Chun Wing. Well, there have been calls to improve the clearance and immigration arrangement at the Huanggang port, so I support this proposal. Regardless of how much money the government will end up saving, we will see very good results. So it shows that the government is very responsible. I'd like to ask the administration about the operation of the system. In July, the administration proposed a figure, and compared to the figure we have today, we see a 30% of difference in only 2 months' time. Just now, the Undersecretary said because of a lower returned tender price, the government is asking for less funding. I think this reason is a bit stretched. When you submitted the paper to the panel on security, you should have already adopted a scientific approach in coming up with the estimated cost. Back when we had the panel meeting, we were of the view that the government had already done the calculation. How come in just 2 months' time you're asking for a lot less funding? Also, the panel meeting we had was made public. But still, the tenderer was willing to lower the tender price. Maybe because of the discussion we had at the panel meeting, that's why you managed to get a much lower returned tender price. So I want to know why there is such a difference in terms of your estimated cost during the 2-month period. Also, why was there a reduction in the returned tender price? Also, I'm looking at paragraph 28. A number of members commended the administration because starting from 2026-27, some $129 million of staff cost will be saved. Well, e-channels have been adopted for quite some time already. How come the administration will manage to save up so much staff costs with a much greater anticipated passenger flow? Is it because of advancement in technology? I believe Mr. Church has already explained this, but please explain again. Chairman, back in July at the panel on security meeting, we mentioned how we would take forward the new Huanggang development project as well as the financial arrangement. And we provided the information based on the RFI. At that time, we already launched the tender exercise. Normally, after an open tender exercise is launched, there should be still time for us to discuss the matters with the tenderers. Indeed, the returned tender price is lowered. Normally, at the tender documents, we set out clearly our requirements, and the returned price is usually a bit different compared to the original tender price we get. That has to do with the market. Also, we adopt the entrustment arrangement. We ask the mainland authorities to help procure the system, and the procurement cost is lower. Therefore, we are asking for a smaller amount of funding this time. Now, on the staff costs, we will use a lot of e-channels, especially for vehicle clearance. Currently, we have human staff manning the channels for vehicle clearance. In future, if we adopt e-channels, we'll need a lot less manpower. If we do not use e-channels, we will have to have a lot more staff. I think the Permanent Secretary would like to supplement. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to respond to what the member said. Would holding tender exercise in parallel make the government suffer in terms of money losses? Indeed, it is very common for us to hold tender exercise in parallel. There are two merits to it. First, it will ensure that we could move things forward a lot faster. Once we get the approval from the LegCo, we can ask the contractor to take forward the work and project. Second, it will make sure that the cost estimate is more accurate if we launch the tender exercise in parallel. Please rest assured, if it is an open tender exercise with competition, even if the LegCo approves a funding approval, it doesn't mean that the company in question will win the bid for sure. This is because the government looks at the quality of the contractor or service provider. It considers a lot of different factors when deciding which bidder will win. So if there is competition, we want to ensure that public money is used effectively. I'd just like to add one more point. I'm not saying that the government is suffering any losses. Well, I object to what the administration said just now. You cannot say that you are adopting a balanced approach based on the market behavior. The government is the one that launches the tender exercise. You have to make sure that you have an accurate cost estimate. Well, the cost estimate wasn't accurate. There is a 30% gap compared to the funding you asked for now and the estimated cost you made. Well, I think this has to do with the tendering system of the government. Any further questions from members? If not, I'm going to put this item to vote. Those in favor of this item FCR 2025-2650, please raise their hands. All right, thank you. Anyone against this proposal? No? I believe that the majority of members present are in favor of this proposal. This proposal is endorsed. Members, today we have the last FC meeting within this legislative session. We have scrutinized all the funding proposals submitted by the government. Together with the items approved today, the FC has approved a total of 67 funding proposals in this legislative sessions, involving a commitment of $126.8 billion. There are 4 legislative sessions for the 7th term LegCo. We have received 261 funding proposals. We have approved them, involving a total commitment of $697.2 billion. I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to each LegCo member for your support. Over the past year, apart from myself as well as the Deputy Chair, Mr. Holden Chow, you also have seen Mr. Andrew Lai, Permanent Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, and Ms. Ann Chen, Deputy Secretary. They almost attended all FC meetings, and they were here to answer members' questions. They also made sure that all funding proposals were scrutinized in an orderly manner. So I'd like to express thanks to the FSTB. According to recent media reports, some members are going to run for the 8th LegCo term, and our LegCo president, Mr. Andrew Leung, already announced that he will not run for the next term. He has served the LegCo for 21 years. For 9 years' time, he served as the president of this council. Under his leadership, we have achieved a lot. We still have 3 weeks to go before the end of this legislative session, and I still would like to take this opportunity to thank the president of this council. The FC, together with the ESC and the PWSC, will, at 2:30 p.m. on the 14th of October, hold a press conference to conclude our work over the past year. This is the end of today's meeting. Thank you very much.